Hey, it's Jeff Hyman, your startup therapist, where we focus on the people part of startups. And I'm joined today by an old friend, Ted Martin of Martin Partners in Chicago. Hey, Ted.
Hey, can I be like a long-term friend instead of an old friend?
Okay, you're a long-term friend. There's nothing old about you. You're kind of timeless, ageless, really. Let me introduce you because we've known each other for a long time.
Since Intuit, you were a new product marketer at Intuit, and I was trying to recruit you to Fat Brain, as head of marketing.
I think I had hair back then. Ted, you founded your own shop, your own recruiting firm about 20 years ago in Chicago, Martin Partners. You're the founder, the managing partner. I know you worked in recruiting even before that, so you've been doing this stuff for quite some time. I know that you are also an alum of the Kellogg Graduate School. You do a lot of search work of chief level and VP level executives. A lot of that at early stage companies, which is very relevant to what we're talking about because many of our viewers, are working with venture capital firms or considering taking money from venture capital firms. I know that book behind you, The New Career Makers, rated you as the #1 recruiter for VC portfolio companies. I like that.
The Martin Partners 20th year anniversary, Jeff. I'll make sure I hand you a anniversary pen.
I'm going to get a pen out of this? That's great. Thank you.
And if you're a client, we're this year, because of our 20th anniversary, we're handing out $10,000 Rolex watches.
Are you serious?
No, I'm not. It's a squeeze ball.
I love it. I'll take one of those too.
Get a Martin Partners squeeze ball.
Because you have so much stress. You have so much stress you got to get rid of. Right. So let's get into it. Did I get the setup pretty good?
Sure.
Okay. Let's start with the unique challenges when you're doing recruiting with venture capital-backed portfolio companies, small, rapidly growing companies. What are some of the unique challenges that you see consistently that they face?
I think the hardest part, especially in the Chicago area, and this is way better today than it was 15, 20 years ago, is finding the entrepreneurial DNA in the candidate pool. This isn't Silicon Valley. We want it to be, but it still has a much lower volume of candidates who have the experience base compared to the Valley. So there's a little more risk-taking that needs to occur here sometimes.
Risk-taking, meaning you're taking someone from a larger company, putting them into a small company, and there's risk there? Is that what you mean?
There's definitely high risk there.
Yeah.
When you think about recruiting, I think about it as, can we reference all the variables? And if you can, your comfort level goes way up. And one thing you can never reference is someone's ability to move from large to small.
Right.
So we used to say it's like, can they empty their own wastebasket? They don't know. They believe they can.
Until they
actually do it.
Is that one of the biggest risks that you see is candidates going to a smaller company for the first time and they realize it's just not for them and they're not successful?
It's in the leadership book that I wrote, which happens to be right here, Exposing Leadership, I count 20 variables.
Got it.
And I came up with those variables across referencing. So from all my informal reference calls over all the years, I took notes on what makes a great leader and what are the issues when they fail.
Right.
Why did they fail at leadership? And for a startup, I put #1 as create versus facilitate process.
Get shit done.
Well, it's not just getting shit done, because in larger corporate America, you also get shit done. But you're getting a lot done really well in a process that already exists
in an
established company.
Yeah.
In a startup, you're creating the process. So as the leader, you better be really good at winging it and with an entrepreneurial flair and flavor to put that process in place, because it doesn't exist, for the CEO.
Right. So it needs to be the ability to conceive and tie together the steps to get these things done, not just get them done.
It's creative. It's creating processes where there are none.
And how rare a characteristic is that in people?
I can't put a percentage on it because it's kind of a reflection of the market you're recruiting from.
Yep.
There's a lot more people with that out in the Valley than there are here in Chicago. And culturally, from here, there's still a really strong, large corporate methodology, if you will, that facilitates processes, and those in that mold don't realize they're simply facilitating and doing a great job of it.
Right.
But an A player in a larger company, could be a B player in an entrepreneurial environment simply from the process creation inability.
Got it. Other big mistakes that you see early stage companies make when it comes to hiring?
I've learned that the key is for me to sit down with if you're working for the VC to find a CEO, it's very different than you're working
Sure.
with the CEO trying to find a senior functional leader.
Let's say the latter. Let's say the CEO is doing a search to build out her or his team, head of marketing, head of sales, finance.
Mm-hmm.
What are some of the common caveats or gotchas that you see consistently?
The most important thing for me is to try and get that person to spend enough time with me so I understand how they think and what their views and assumptions are of recruiting. So the more I can get them to give me their war stories of when they've done search work either on their own or contingent or other retained search work, and I can understand how they want to work. Do they want to, if I just find one great candidate, are they happy and they'll close on them?
Yeah.
Or are they do they like to ruminate on the process, and do they want to see multiple candidates because it helps them get in the mode of understanding what they're going to hire, and how much data do they want and do they need? So data meaning marketplace data.
Yeah. Do you feel like executives err on one side or the other? Do they tend to want to see too many candidates and take too long to make a decision, or do they not want you to look more broadly at a broader pool of people? How do you find that balance? If a leader says to you, "How many people should I see?"
I'm really trying to understand their temperament and how many they're going to want to see based on who they are. So if we put the norm at 3 final candidates,
Mm-hmm.
right, then 6 is a lot for that person who's going to be comfortable with 3, and 1 isn't enough.
Got it.
But some CEOs say, look, if you can solve this next week with the person, I'll take them and I'll hire them.
Got it.
And the other person will say, well, no, I'd really like a search process, and I'd like not just 3, but I'd like to see all the resumes you're generating. Let's go back and forth on them and make it iterative.
Got it.
And so why don't you bring me along into the market with you and tell me about people that turn you down and why. And by the way, comp data. I want to know everything you learn out there, so when I get to the point of hiring, I know if I'm overpaying, underpaying, or I can't touch them.
Got it. Kind of a more involved approach.
And the more I can get them to explain who they are and how they run, and whether they're a one and done or I'll see them all, and there's no such thing as too much communication.
When it comes to interviewing candidates, what are some of the mistakes that you see executives make in terms of the questions they ask or their approach?
My belief across 30 years of doing this is that the real key is the informal referencing that I do through talking to other functional leaders. Let's stick with the CEO hiring a functional leader.
Yeah.
If I'm doing a CFO search, I've already spoken to somebody in companies where that person's worked, and ideally head of sales, head of marketing, head of ops, a CEO, a president, all around, and someone's given me a couple good data points that this is a star. If I'm only bringing stars to the table, which is my goal as a recruiter, you can't hire a B player.
Got it.
If you don't hire a B player, we're not talking chemistry fit. So I don't need to try and over-orchestrate how you interview a candidate, because anybody will naturally get the chemistry fit right. That's what they're good at doing.
Right.
What they're bad at doing a lot of times is performance interview.
But I hear what you're saying, but isn't the fit, figuring out whether the person is going to fit, harder? You're saying that you think interviewing for experience and competencies is harder?
I do.
Tell me about that.
I think that it's one research report said that a person makes their mind up in the first 30 seconds of an interview and spends the whole rest of the time subconsciously proving or disproving that 30-second quick read. I think that's the case. So you do a quick 30 seconds, and CEOs are running fast. They're startups. They're like, I got the guy. I got the woman. I'm good.
Right.
And now, hey, this is great. You like that? I like that. Yeah. Okay, let's get him hired. And so that's not really at the the chemistry of fit piece of how the day-to-day is going to occur in that company. So what I encourage is a lot more smaller meetings. I'm not a big believer in a big 4 to 5 hour, some really long interview, because CEOs don't have time for that. Like I can't get their head around that.
Right.
They're running too fast, too hard. But lots of multiple meetings, including informal ones, a dinner, very important. If there's something they can do together on a weekend, like meeting for coffee, if they're in the same city. Lots of multiple meetings add up to chemistry fit.
That's a very different approach than some others advocate, which is one marathon interview where we're going to go through your entire background from the time you were conceived in the womb all the way to today, and that can take 2, 3, 4 hours.
And I don't think your life is like that day to day once you're together.
Got it.
But because you have a lot of different fast pass in the hallway, quick text, quick email, quick back and forth. I'd rather try and get the CEO and the person they're trying to hire to start simulating what it's going to be like through a lot of smaller, different interactions. I want them texting each other. I want them emailing each other, Facebooking each other,
right,
and trying to figure out what they're like. And then they kind of get much more comfortable, hey, this is going to be a good fit.
So those kind of dry runs, if you will, or test driving the relationship.
Mm-hmm.
Almost like you court someone before you get married. You don't just get married, right? After one big interview.
I like that, because I'm constantly encouraging the CEO to say, why don't you pick up the phone and call him? And sometimes they'll say, I thought that was your job.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, my job is to ensure the chemistry fits right. And the way we're going to get at that is much interactive in here the final couple weeks as possible. There's no such thing as you can't learn too much about someone.
Got it. Let's say the situation is this. The CEO finds a candidate that they're thrilled with. Let's say it's their first head of sales or first head of marketing.
Mm-hmm.
They put that candidate in front of the VCs, the board of directors, who doesn't care for the candidate, or maybe they prefer a different candidate. Mm-hmm. How do you resolve that kind of situation where whose decision should it be?
Right. Again, it comes back to the front end of the search. What I'm trying to do is spend as much time with the VC, the board member, and the CEO to figure out who's going to be the final decision maker and how much influence does the VC want to have at the end of the day, and how much do they want to help sell. So some can be tremendous salespeople where they'll say, absolutely, I'm in here with you, and I will call the VC and say, I got a star, and I want you to call him first.
Got it. I see.
Because I don't want the CEO to call him yet.
Right.
Because you're going to sell 10 times better why this valuation is a good one and why we're going to go up.
So you spend time at the beginning sorting through the roles and responsibilities of the search process.
Right. And I want to know what kind of salesperson I've got.
Right.
Or what kind of evaluator I have.
Right. So we go through that process. At the end of the day, we can't agree. Candidate A is the preference of the CEO. Candidate B is the preference of the VC.
Mm-hmm.
In your experience, I know it's not always this cut and dry, but who should make the call? Should it be the person? Should the CEO ultimately be the decision maker and have to live or die by her decisions? Or is she smarter to defer to the board or VC?
I mean, you're asking the same, that they're going to have that worked out, as you know, on a day-to-day basis on a lot of issues.
Yeah.
It's not just hiring.
Right.
So they've ideally already established a pattern of who has the ultimate say.
Got it.
And
it'll fit right into that.
It'll fit into that. It doesn't have to. It doesn't come up for the first time on recruiting.
Got it. Let's switch gears to something totally different, and that is LinkedIn. What is the role of LinkedIn in the recruiting process? Let's say specifically we're looking for a mid-level person, so we're not going to use an outside recruiter. We're looking for a product manager or something. What is the role of LinkedIn? What should I use it for, not use it for, etc.?
Mm-hmm. Don't use it for referencing. Don't use it to say, well, look at all these scratch my back comments. This person has to be a star.
Yeah, like Yelp reviews, right?
Right, exactly. Use it for candidate identification. Here's a lot of candidates. And use it for to get at. I mean, the really valuable role for me is informal referencing.
To figure out who they know, and then
getting to people, and then the informal phone call not what someone types.
Right.
But that, again, that sidebar, I want to know before I even call the star that I got a star. Think how different my sell pitch is.
Got it.
I call you up once I already know you're a star, and I say, Jeff, I really want you to look at this. I know you're a star. Here's why it's a potential fit. I'm selling you in the first call instead of giving some objective approach.
Got it.
And so LinkedIn is a really valuable tool in terms of quantifying how many people are out there. And I would contend that it shows you they have an interest in leaving. You know, you look for motivation to leave, motivation to join.
Yeah.
I know an awful lot of stars who aren't on LinkedIn, and they don't have time for it, quote unquote, and they don't see the value in it. So
what does that tell you? That means they're worth pursuing even more if they're not on LinkedIn?
It doesn't mean they're worth pursuing more, but if I found out they were a star,
right,
which was my first objective, I'm pursuing them whether they're on LinkedIn or not.
I see.
But I know there's a lot of people who are not on LinkedIn because they don't have time to be on it, and they're very motivated, and they're going to where they are, and it's going to be really hard to get their attention to look on the outside.
Got it.
And this comes back to kind of motivation to leave, motivation to join.
Right.
If you can't find both in a candidate, I'm worried because now we have to buy you. And if we have to buy you,
we're going to overpay.
We're gonna go beyond the market norm and normally go beyond your internal constraints in the company.
So that begs another great question. You mentioned compensation. You know, as you know, startups, whether they're venture funded or not, have a limit. They can only pay so much, right? They can't compete with the biggest companies and benefits. On the margin, are startups better off once they figure out how much they can spend? Are they better off finding someone who's currently in the same position, let's say a VP of marketing, or are they better off finding a rock star director of marketing for whom this is a significant jump, a significant pay increase, and will presumably be really excited about it? How do you kind of navigate that difference?
Ideally, in an ideal world, a great recruiter puts both in front of the client. You want, here's an up-and-coming star. They're going to be more affordable. You're going to give them less options. They haven't done it. You're going to stretch them. But
it's a bigger risk. There's a bigger risk there.
Right. So there's more risk, less referenceable. Here's your lateral move, and you're going to have to give them 2 times the options on a much higher base, and to get their interest.
Because otherwise, why would they leave? They're in that role already.
Well, now you're asking a great question about why does anybody leave one startup to go to another? The bloom has to be off the rose, right, at the startup.
Yeah.
So now, were they part of that?
Yeah. You know, did that happen because of them or despite them?
Right. It looked awfully good when they joined, right? And they were counting on options being worth a lot of money at exit. But now they're interested in leaving. So the company's turn, the valuation's toast.
Yeah.
They don't believe they're going to make a lot of money on their options.
Right.
Therefore, motivation to leave if they're a star. Let's assume they're a star.
And just so I'm clear, how do we get at that question of whether the startup failed despite them or because of them?
Well, so it's much easier if you're the CEO, you're carrying the buck.
But
right?
Let's assume it's not the CEO.
Okay, so it's not the CEO.
Yeah.
Now there's a lot of good questions back and forth to have in the interview process, and the VCs are going to have a lot of opinions on the space and where this company is ranked and whether they're going to get out. You know, so once the functional leadership team doesn't think they're going to get out, everybody wants to leave.
Got it.
Because you've got to put all that time and energy and effort into your next chance for the payoff.
Got it.
So I think that you're clearly, it depends on how they talk about it, right? If you're the head of marketing and it was your marketing strategy that's now kind of sent you the wrong way, and there's other companies in the space going the right way, you're holding the bag.
Right.
If you're the CFO and you're saying our head of marketing is sending us down a rabbit hole, you don't have much, damage. You don't have much taint on you, right?
Yeah, sure. Got it.
So that's dramatically different.
In the 2 minutes remaining, one last question I wanted to get at, which is relocation. So startups don't have a big budget for relocation, to relocate a candidate that might be the perfect candidate. So should startups even consider, or early stage companies, should they even consider looking at candidates who don't live in the area already? Is that just a waste of time? Do you see frequently the case where they do recruit someone from outside the area at the last minute they get cold feet, or their spouse objects to the move?
I think you're looking for we are looking for the wild card factor. They went to school in that town. They have family in that town. There's got to be something more than a reload, because, to your point, that's a lot of money for a startup to bear, or it's a lot of risk for the candidate to take.
Right.
And if they're young enough and they're renting, then it's not a big deal at all. So you definitely look around the country for a nationwide search, because you look for the startup factor or the young up-and-comer who isn't encumbered with family and house.
But on the margin, unless they have ties to that area, whether it's someone from outside the Bay Area going to the Bay Area or someone local to Chicago, unless they have some direct tie, it's going to be tough to get them to move in an early stage company.
It's almost impossible.
Got it.
If you don't have a wild card factor.
And if they say yes, they might chicken out at the last second, in which case you got to start the search all over again.
Yeah, I don't think they say yes. I think they shut it down on the front end.
Yeah, right.
They're like, "Are you kidding?"
Right. But you'll see candidates, kind of get cold feet on the last house hunting visit, or they're sticker shock on the house prices, whatever.
Right.
So
it's
great.
Very common.
Well, Ted, this has been very helpful. How can people learn more about Martin Partners, get in touch with you, etc.?
Ted@martinpartners.com is my email address. The website, Martin Partners, and Amazon has the book Exposing Leadership.
Exposing Leadership.
Top 20 leadership traits redefined.
Fantastic. Thank you for sharing that. We appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ted.